so much love the French that when we cut the heads, we took the tongue in some of the cultures. So when I came here at what, that was 19, I was in one part of the French Empire that had been conquered by England. So I never stopped to think in terms of empires. Because if you think in terms of empires, it is much easier to understand the differences between here and there, right? To make us think that it's so different, yes, it's different, right? There are laws for the vicinities, there are laws for the metropolis, right? But if you look at the relationships, it's all the same. Unlike if you want to more concretely illustrate that, did you know that 37% of the budget from Haiti come from diaspora, people living in Montreal or New York or Miami? So it's all part of it, right? So I always had this perspective because I was actually brought up on, I had access to this room full of books from this old uncle who was a magician, and he let me read his magic books, but he had all the plenty of interesting correspondence between planters, Haitian spies in the US trying to stir up slave revolts, like relationship with Napoleon Bonaparte, and all of this. It was a mythological thing, right? To understand me, I think that you have to go to some of these traces, like, frankly, I was not subjected to Marx or nothing. My heroes were who? Who do you think? Chevalier de Boulogne. Did you ever hear about the Chevalier de Boulogne? He did. Great guy.
He was considered the French Mozart, Black Mozart.
Musician, fencer, boxer, theoretician, head of the masonry. He spent, what struck my imagination is that this guy, he spent 7 years in this mountain in Haiti called the Macaya Mountain. And nobody knows where the hell he was. He was inside that mountain, and there's something about that mountain that's still nourishing all kind of mythology. So here I was, I came here as a craft dodger. I had the opportunity to meet some extraordinary people, like Anne Coos, my older sister, first British lady I ever met, man. Like, I was so impressed by the composure of that lady, and she had a lot of things to say. Like, she taught me a lot of things, like had me go read. And the best book I read was some book called Dialectics from C.L.R. James, right? Now, you know who C.L.R. James is? He's an old man. He was then an old man, a militant. He had known Trotsky, he had known Lenin, he was in Russia, he was an internationalist, right? And I realized that I had met him before. In his writing, my uncle was in London as a chargé d'affaires. Well, actually he was in exile because once you're too smart in Haiti, they send you in the diplomatic thing, right? So they sent him to London and Paris, and of course he came back with all these ideas. And first thing that I remember him reading these scripts by this guy named Johnson or something, and later I realized it was James, and he had made a play about Toussaint Louverture. And I remember that because this, as he was reading it with us, like there were some people from the American embassy that came and said, "Ah, Mr. Fils-Aimé, how long are you gonna stay with us? I heard you on vacation." And he didn't say nothing more. He left, and I realized that, hey, this guy, this foreigner, drive in and tell my uncle that it's time for you to leave your country, right? And this is where I had this feeling that we were in this empire, and there was something unjust about this empire. So when I came in the state as an exile again, because I was working with the Catholic youth against Duvalier. So I naturally identify with the Afro-Americans. And when I came in Quebec as a draft dodger, I met these people, and they helped me a lot to learn about politics. And I say thank you to Mr. James, to Alfie Roberts, to Rosie Douglas, who taught me a lot too, because he was not only a man of action, he was a man of theory also. But theory had to be linked with action. So what do we have here? We have some young people who just learned a lot of great things about dialectics. Dialectics is important, believe me. If you have not read James on it, you cannot read Lenin or Mao or Ken or whoever, but to understand this world, I think that you have to know about dialectics, because it is important to understand the link between things. And exactly the links between things is maybe what is missing here. If you look at this film, you will see that when this riot took place, there were some young people, many white people, that were battling the police. You have this exhibition here with pictures. You look at the window, right? You see these young white guys, right? These were people from some uniform big cells from the Front de Libération du Québec, right? So you cannot dismiss this element in the sense that understanding history means understanding who made it. Like, they took a big part in that. They were inspired by that the black struggle, and they took a stand, right? We cannot historically deny that. Nor can we deny the participation of some of our Jewish friends that were our allies, and they didn't have to stand with us. They stood because they had an experience that told them, look, this is a case of injustice. Like, there was so much similarity to all these experiences of exclusion of Jewish people that really they took a stand. And like, I don't know if some of them are here, but I want to thank them, right? Because these were some glorious days, in the sense that what you had was a kind of a microcosm of the society. Never in my life I have seen so many people from so many different groups, and with a lot of contradiction. Even if you take it at the individual level, I myself had a plurality of contradiction within my brain. I had shock of cultures within my brain, like different notions, different ideologies. All these things were there in me, in the black students, in the other supporters. All of it, all of it was there. And somehow, because this was a clear case of injustice, we managed to stick together and carry through, despite how many differences. Yes, we had a lot of differences. We had some people call themselves Marxists, some call them Maoists. This one was a French nationalist, this one is FLQ, this one, whatever. And within the black movement itself, there were many different strains, right? Well, I'm not calling for my own, but I define myself as a West Indian internationalist, a black internationalist. Now, what is so different between that and the Marxists is that through learning the experiences of the black movement within the international movement, we have come to understand that each time that we simply align behind the white left, we end up losing because they always have priorities that do not include us, right? Not that we were racist, no, we just acknowledge history, right? Each time you align behind them, their priority becomes the dominant one. Now, what is the historical lesson to be learned? Like, as I'm saying that, I realized that the woman movement after us went through the same process. Like, at one point, they said, look, all these struggles being led, and like, we're not getting nowhere because the priority is never us. So they start to organize themselves. Great, and that's great. Like, for me as a male chauvinist, that's not quite a pleasant attitude, right? I was ready to smash them for lack of discipline and lack of solidarity, like petty bourgeois, this, that. But they were so right. You know. As the year passed, you see that like they were right lit from us. Like if they had stayed within this movement dominated by men, they wouldn't be nowhere now. They'd still be right. Okay, I think I'm talking too much. Maybe you should have some questions, and I would gladly answer them. Anybody has a question? He has a question. Yes.
I have a question. What advice would you give to contemporary students who feel themselves victims of injustice or unjust situations in the university?
The advice that I would give them, go through the due process, because I believe there has been some changes after this thing there. Because the problem that took place that was there is that there was no real structure to deal with this kind of issues, right? Within the case of Professor Anderson, like, it's true that he was not per se racist, he was just systematically racist. Just remember one thing, this is not that far from this experience with World War II. You had a lot of people who perish because they define them as one bad race. They say, you are a Jew, so therefore we put you in the camp. And there were learned people, learned scientists, who spread that word that, look, these Jews, they are inferior, they must be get ridden of, right? So if that is true for the Jews, that is true for the blacks too. Like, I believe that there has been some wealth accumulated on the back of black people. And this wealth, the way it was built, was to force, through convincing oneself that this was right. And this is what racism is really about, argumenting to justify what has been done wrong. Excuse me, I don't have the impression that I answered your question. I think I'm digressing. Like, if you wanted to do what advice, if you think you are right, you must persist, right? And try to make sure that your voice is heard somehow. I would say that go through the process, because maybe if there was a proper process, this thing would not have happened. Like, and I'm very glad to see that there has been some progress on this. I am very proud to know that I contributed to that as a militant. More questions? More questions? Okay, let's hold it up.
Surely there's more questions.
You have a question?
No, just to thank the organizers. I enjoyed the film. I was 18 years old. I was standing outside when all of this happened. And it just has given me a much deeper perspective of everything that was surrounding it. You know, I said to my wife, I was in that big meeting. And I think what it's done for me today is at the time, someone mentioned in the narration of the film that the more radical groups have maybe pushed it further. And I think that the impression that I had at the time was that they'd, quote, radicalized from day one, but now seen as, I said, well, that wasn't the case. That there was more of a feeling that there were a lot of people of good faith trying to work it through. So it's not a question, it's just trying to remember something from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But this is very interesting. I think the organizers did a great job, and I'm happy to hear you speak.
Okay. I have to be frank with you. Like, I was not a student. As told you, I was a member of an organized group, a black, Marx left-wing group. And my presence there was in support as an organizer or an apprentice organizer, and who had a lot of notion. I came there to help these students, right? To be truthful, our analysis at the beginning was that this is gonna be a very sweet and this is gonna be a very sweet thing. We're gonna win, because it was so obvious that there was discrimination. However, we had been taught by a very experienced guy named Alfie Roberts, who was in direct contact with C.L.R. James. And all throughout this thing, we, the few of us who were militants of this black West Indian group, we were always in contact with James, always through Alfie, and asking him, what do we do next, right? And some of the lessons that he gave us are extraordinary. Maybe you would be interested if you plan on doing something, right? And like some of the things that he would warn us about was, okay, you're gonna have to deal with police infiltrators, right? You're gonna have to deal with people in your own rank who lose their head and want to do things that are not profitable, like this gentleman there spoke about, guys they offered us. This guy that he's speaking about, like he's an agent and he offers us some dynamite to blow up the place. That's good. That's good. Like it's good for him. Like the police look like they are doing more job, or maybe they get paid more overtime, right? And maybe they sincerely believe that we were so much dangerous, right? That of course we took some precaution. We analyzed this situation. We understood that this apparently innocent matter in the context, the political context of them, could be explosive, right? And we knew that we were into some deep thing if we made any mistakes. Yes, it was innocent, good-hearted people struggling to have their rights respected. As militants, we supported them, but we had a greater vision than most people because we were political people, right? And what is unfortunate in this thing is that at every stage of this conflict, right, the university people, they underestimated us. And I can understand them. Like when you look at us, we are quite young. But I was 19, but I was not that young. That politically, I was not that young. Like at 12, I used to be in Haiti distributing leaflets against the dictatorship, right? So every person that comes here comes with a story, with some experience. But for these people, because of the dominant ideas of the time as concerned race, if you look it up, you will see that the dominant idea were this: look, Jews are inferior, black are inferior, blacks, all they do is party, and they are incoherent, right? They perceive us as incapable of planning or directing any serious struggle. We were dismissed as rebel rousers, right? And if you go on deeper and look, maybe you will find out that this comes from the conditioning of that they were subjected to. Like they were comfortable in the idea that there is no problem here in Canada. It's in the state that there is problem. But at the same time, there are signs that would tell you, we didn't see that, right? We thought it was normal, for example, for Canada to define itself as founded by two main races. One race of French boys, one race of English boys, right? So, what do you do of the Indians? About the Jews that were there, the Arabs, the Indians, the blacks that were there from the beginning? Did you know that the blacks were there even at the beginning of the settlements? Simply because they came, their presence was normal in the context of the American empire, of the French royalty or the English. And like people don't make the connection immediately, like that, or that some blacks themselves are surprised. Oh, there was this black lady in Montreal, black this. Of course, there were. It was a whole system where you had the colonies and you had some new territories here and being conquered. So it was the empire. So like I never lost sight of this fact because of the fact that I was lucky to come from a country that had accumulated some archives and had access for it. Well, Not that I learned anything seriously, but it was plenty of images and fairy tale that made me different from, let's say, most Canadian borns here. Even the blacks here, I had to learn about them. Like when the first British lady I seen in my life was Anne Coles. Seriously. And like she really impressed me, my God. She speaks English great and she has manners and things. Oh, that's great. And I was not very much aware of West Indian intelligentsia. All of it is a process that took very